Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a snowy December morning here in Noblesville, Indiana. This is Stop Diabetes Insight, your December edition, and we have some exciting but also difficult for some people topic to discuss today. We're going to be talking about holiday stress and how to handle the different emotions that we might experience during this season. But before we get started, I want to give a big shout out to Jim Wofford. He is our producer of our show, and he does a fabulous job. His company, Noblesville Banners and Signs, or Logan Street Banners and Signs, sorry. Logan Street something. There we go, Signs and Banners. I didn't get it. You know, it doesn't matter what the name. He does a great job. He's done a lot of signage for us. I've gotten trophies from his companies. So, you know, if you're in need of those kinds of things, please come and visit Jim here in Noblesville. He's fabulous to work with, and his whole team is. So we really appreciate the fact that he donates this time in his studio to us so that we can bring you these timely topics on diabetes, and as well as just some other general health topics that we discuss.
Absolutely.
So let's get into our program today. First, we want to tell everyone, you know, happy holidays.
Yes, it is here.
And this is the appropriate picture because that's what it looks like outside our door today.
Yes.
Our special guest that is going to talk with us today about holiday stress and management is Dr. Mary Groot, and she'll introduce herself a little bit later in the show. And then, you know, it's nearly resolution time. We all go through this. Now, don't change the station, as it says right there on your screen. Hear us out. I know, sometimes we hear the word resolution and we think, really? Not again. I'm not going there. I can never keep my resolutions. But we've got some tips today that maybe will help you to carry out your resolutions. So let's get into some of those.
Yeah, so Haley, you're going to talk to us a little bit about it. Yeah. So the first tip is describe the problem in detail.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Exactly. So instead of just saying, when I get home, I eat too many cookies, be specific. You know, say, I ate too many cookies when I get home because I didn't have time for lunch and I'm so hungry. This explains the action behavior change. So by finding our weak link, we know exactly where to start and break the problem chain.
Gotcha. And then there is listing your options.
Yes, this could be as easy as not buying cookies when you go to the grocery store, buying a healthier snack option, making time for lunch at work, you know, maybe setting an alarm in your phone to remind you, oh, I have to eat lunch, putting a Post-it on your computer, eating a mid-afternoon light snack, I misspoke, or participating in some type of physical activity when you get home, like taking a quick walk around the block when you get home.
Okay, so then there's also, you know, when you're getting your things, it's weighing out the pros and cons of each options and choosing what's best.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Okay.
So which goal is most realistic? What can you actually do? Maybe it's a combination of not skipping lunch or eating a healthier snack option when you get home. Forces you to make a healthier snack option instead of going to all the junk food whenever you get home.
Gotcha. And then probably what's really important is maybe creating some kind of action plan.
Yes. So what will you do? When will you do it? And how are you going to handle the roadblocks that you come across? It's often helpful to bring in a friend or a loved one that kind of can help cheer you on and add in a little bit of element of fun as you're going it. Maybe write a little reminder or just kind of pump yourself up and post it in a prominent place so that you see it every day.
Okay. And probably what's great is, you know, the follow through of it all. So follow the plan with the mindset of success.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Okay.
So after a reasonable time period, do a little quick self-assessment. Did your plan work? And if it didn't, you know, what can you do next time? How can you modify your plan to make you more successful in the future? It's really important to remember that problem solving is a process. You know, you don't always succeed. Maybe you went too big the first time. So keep trying and you will succeed.
Absolutely. Haley, thank you so much for that.
Yes, that was good. Some great tips. And one of the things that you mentioned, having a healthier snack when you get home, I've heard it suggested for families to always keep a plate or some kind of a dish in the refrigerator that's got carrots and celery and fresh vegetables and things like that in it, so that when you're home and you're fixing dinner and the kids are all clamoring around you, you set that out and it's like, here, you can eat all of this that you want before we have dinner. So, it's a good tip for families as well, not just for ourselves. But Haley, before we move on, our audience hasn't gotten to meet you yet.
Yes.
To our
A
audience.
new face.
Yes. So please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're studying in school and why you chose that career path.
Okay. Well, I'm a community health strategies intern at the ADA. I go to IU Bloomington, and my health major is community health. I've always been interested in health since I was a kid. That's always what I wanted to do. I first started out being a pre-med major and then a nursing major. And I just kind of realized through going through clinical experience that what I really wanted to do was help a larger group of people and make a more kind of lasting impact in a different way that you would do, say, as a nurse, which is very important, but just I wanted to serve a more large group of people. So, community health was a really good fit for me. Yeah.
Well, good. Yeah. All right. Well, we're so glad to have you.
Absolutely.
I have to say, I'm sorry. She is my intern, and tomorrow is her last day.
Yeah.
Very sad.
Very sad. It was too fast.
It did. The time went really fast. I'm going to miss her. She has done a fabulous job for us. And so, Haley, thanks so much for joining us on the show today. We're really happy. So I think now it's time for us to move into our next segment. We're going to bring on Dr. Groot with us. So while we're doing that, just take a look at these images on the screen. Do any of these images reflect how you may feel during the holidays? You know, maybe that tension headache, you're just completely frazzled. Maybe you're sad. Look at the woman in the middle. You know, she's balancing shopping and cleaning and cooking and lists and that's so many of us. And then the poor lady in the bottom left that burnt her cookies, and then, buying the gifts. Did I go over my budget? Do I have the right gift for every person? Sometimes we can stress on that so much. And then, of course, the kid from Home Alone, right?
I'm usually in a state of Home Alone.
We can't forget that the holiday stress can affect our kids, too. And then, of course, we've got the famous saying, stressed, spelled backwards, is desserts. Do you head to dessert when you're feeling stressed? Sometimes I'm guilty of calling M&Ms my vitamins. Okay? I've just admitted that here on air because we're all human. Okay? I try not to, but sometimes it happens. Mm-hmm. So Mary is going to, Dr. Groot is going to help us learn how to keep calm and carry on during this holiday season. Okay, so Mary, we're going to let you drive your slides here.
Terrific. Great. Well, thank you to Carol and to everyone that's affiliated with our program here to having me on today. I'm very happy to talk with you about all things related to diabetes and particularly holiday stress because it's so relevant this time of year. One of the things we know is that stress is very real. The holidays are very demanding, as we were just talking about, and diabetes can add an extra layer of stress for many people because it places additional demands on our time on a daily basis, and in the holidays when we have even less time and less attention, it can add to that. And it's easy to feel like we should be having a good time with family or friends, even when we may not be having such a good time. We may have a lot of things going on internally. So there's a lot to balance in the holidays. So what is stress? Well, we talk about stress a lot, and stress is the difference between what we feel we must do and what we feel we can do. So it's the difference between those two, and it's that discrepancy that causes us stress. And we can reduce stress by practicing kindness with ourselves. When we tend to have lots of expectations, high expectations of ourselves and of others, we tend to feel a little more irritable. We might feel we may have less patience. We may not communicate as effectively as we would like. We may end up feeling more hurt, more sensitive at comments that may have no intention of hurting us, but we feel that way anyway. And we may have the tendency to hurt others in ways that we don't intend. And so taking time to care for ourselves, getting rest, getting good nutrition, making sure that we take a breather, even if that's 2 minutes in the car before we go to our next event, is really important to help ourselves stay centered. And the more centered we become with ourselves, then we can be more present for others and really make the most of the holidays. So in addition to holiday stress, there's a couple of topics that I think are really relevant for our audience members who are working with diabetes, as well as family members of people with diabetes. And the first topic is diabetes-related distress. And so this is distress associated that's specific with managing diabetes, whether that's checking blood sugars or checking feet or diet or exercise, all of the
It
many
becomes
behaviors.
overwhelming for people to think about all these things on a daily basis.
Exactly.
I mean, I understand. I live with it.
Exactly, right. So we have limited, and this can be compounded if we feel that we have limited sources of social support, if we've had a recent loss, or we just don't have the community of people who are there to help us. And that varies over time, and that's pretty typical. At any given time, anywhere between 18 and 30% of people with diabetes will be experiencing diabetes-related distress, but the lifetime prevalence is likely to be much higher than that. In fact, in my own practice, I suspect that just about everyone with diabetes may experience diabetes-related distress or burnout at any given time. So it's not uncommon. And so that's an important thing for everyone to know, is that it's not an uncommon experience. But it can lead to feeling more isolated, feeling like I may be the only person who's dealing with diabetes right now and everyone else seems to be having a good time, more feelings of hopelessness, and then potentially just giving up. I'm overwhelmed, I just can't do it anymore. So what can we do about it? We can be aware of our assumptions. The first step is what's going on inside our heads. And so are we placing more pressure on ourselves to be perfect when we're managing diabetes? Yes. How do we interpret the number that comes up on our glucometer if we check our blood sugars? Right. Or what do we anticipate that number to be even if we don't check? Do we think that number is going to spell BAD on our meter?
Right, because we don't want to go to our doctor and have our doctor admonish us because he doesn't feel like our numbers are where they should be.
Right, and many people worry about that.
Yes.
Right, whether that actually happens or not.
Right, exactly.
But that can be the feeling. And so those feelings contribute to a sense of pressure. We can also feel pressure around holiday foods. So this is the time of year when cakes and cookies and desserts, all of those kinds of rituals that we have around food that help to mark the holidays can feel that they're as though they're in direct opposition of diabetes. Now we know in the modern era that all things in moderation is our new mantra for diabetes, but many people can still feel as though they have to do without, and those feelings of deprivation can add additional pressure. So we can challenge those assumptions. We don't have to be perfect. Diabetes requires flexibility, as everyone with diabetes knows. It requires flexibility, and this time of year in particular, we're doing the best we can with what we have, whether that's time or resources. We just want to be kind to ourselves and be flexible and respond to the situations as they come. We can also set some limits, both with ourselves and also with others, and say, thank you, that looks delicious, but I'm going to pass right now. So telling our hosts that we care, that we know that the food that they prepare for us is a sign of caring for us, but that we need to make some choices, and that doesn't mean that we're not grateful for what they do. Okay. So there's some things that we can do around that. The other piece that I like to talk about is depression, because this is a time of year when we have lots of expectations about happiness. Right? If we listen to the holiday carols on the radio,
Hallmark movies,
we watch the films, right? We have lots of reminders of this is a happy time filled with love, and we hope that that's the experience for everyone. But in fact, this can also be a time when losses feel most poignant, whether that's a natural life event or that has happened, whether that's a disconnection in a relationship that's very meaningful, whether that's the loss of a loved one, an actual loss. And so if those periods of sadness become prolonged and they last for at least 2 weeks, and they are combined with multiple symptoms, such as feeling consistently sad or blue or down in the dumps, a lack of interest in things or motivation that you would normally experience, changes in sleep, changes in appetite, feeling worthless or feeling excessively guilty about things that ordinarily wouldn't bother you so much. Those are all times decreased concentration, much more than our usual selves, scattered selves. Then those are symptoms that we want to pay attention to, and that can be successfully treated. So when it comes to depression and diabetes, we know that 1 in 4 people with diabetes will experience elevated depressive symptoms at some point in their lifetime, 25%, which is a high number.
It is.
We know that work that my team has done at Indiana University School of Medicine, at West Virginia University, and at Ohio University, we've just completed a study where we found that depression tends to last much longer in people with diabetes than we see in the general population, anywhere around 92 weeks in people with diabetes compared to 22 weeks in the general population. So depression, when it comes for people with diabetes, is not something that necessarily will go away on its own, which is all the more reason for us to pay attention to it and to ask for help.
And as a friend or a family member, we can't look at that person and just try to say, snap out of it, because it's more than that.
Right, exactly, right.
It might be our good intention to say, oh, come on, lift your spirits, but it's not always that easy.
Exactly.
So we need to keep that in mind.
Exactly. So one of the reasons that I do depression research is to find options to treat it. And the really good news about depression and diabetes at the holiday time and at any time is that depression can be treated effectively. And so this is really important for people to know. It's important for people to know that depression is associated with more difficulty managing blood sugars. That's kind of not a surprise. Diabetes is hard enough. If we add depression on top of that, that makes it more difficult. It can be associated with worsened health outcomes. But most importantly, it can be treated. And so we have lots of options to do that. Antidepressant medications are one option. They may not be the option for everyone, but there are more medications now on the market and that are available by prescription from a primary care provider, from a mental health provider like a psychiatrist, or even from a specialty care doctor, than there have ever been in the history of depression. So if you have to have depression, now is a good time to know that you have multiple medication options. Everyone's brain chemistry is different, and these medications are not designed to change your brain, change how you think, but to really help rebalance brain chemistry to reduce the symptoms that go with depression. And so there's good news about that. We also know that talk therapy, or sometimes called psychotherapy, but I like to refer to it as talk therapy because that's what happens. You talk and share with a counselor, whether that's someone of a pastoral counselor or someone of faith, whether that's a licensed mental health provider, master's level person, a psychologist, a social worker. There are tools that we use that have good evidence base that can have a significant effect on depression. In a recent study that we just completed at Indiana University in the School of Medicine in conjunction with West Virginia and Ohio universities, we found that people who were enrolled in talk therapy in a particular program called Program Active were 12 times more likely to be depression-free at the end of 10 sessions of talk therapy than people who were randomized to usual care. And so that's a significant change in difference between the two groups. And everyone in these groups were comparable in terms of where they came from and their age and their duration of diabetes. So
and that was strictly just talk therapy without medications and anything added?
Holding everything else constant. That's right. That's right. We also know that physical activity can make a big difference. And so sometimes we think about exercise as involving an expensive gym or having to wear spandex or sweating or ruining our hair or all spandex. Right, exactly. But in fact, it's really about moving our bodies through space and time, whether that's moving up and down our staircase at our home, or whether that's going for a walk in our neighborhood in a safe place, wherever that happens to be. So we know that physical activity has a significant impact on improving mood. In the same study that we've just completed, in the program active study, we found that people who were assigned physical activity in this randomized trial had significant improvements in A1C in addition to their significant improvements in depression. Which makes sense because we know that physical activity can help with blood sugars.
Is there a certain amount of time that you need to do that exercise in order to keep those levels, or is there a recommended amount of time?
It's a great question. So the really good news is that the type of physical activity doesn't seem to matter that much.
Okay.
So anything you do to move your body through space and time is helpful. The key is doing it. In our study, we asked people to exercise 150 minutes per week, consistent with the recommendations from the American College of Sports Medicine. And people were able to do that. But how they did that really varied. So some people went to community centers where they engaged in more formal kinds of activities, but many people were engaged in walking, or doing vigorous activities around their home. Gardening, snow shoveling is one of those things that if it's done safely, it can be a good idea. The key is to make sure that whatever you choose to do, that's consistent with where your medical status is right now. Is it safe for you to do that?
Well, and
checking with your doctor is a good idea.
The American Diabetes Association has recently made new recommendations for movement, and it's our position that everyone should get up and move every 30 minutes in some fashion. We used to say every 90, but it has been changed now to every 30 minutes. So even if you work in an office setting, it's as simple as I could clearly just dial my phone and call Alyssa, who's at the front of the office. But when I can, I try to just get up and go talk to her and walk to her, as opposed to just calling her on the phone or sending an email to the person in the office next door to me. I try to make myself get up and walk around the office just for those things. So if you're working, that's what a suggestion.
It's a great idea, and how we arrange our environment really affects how we interact with it. So I've moved my printer, for example, so that it's in the next room, and I like to print. So when I go to pick up my printing, I have to move, and it helps us move. It's good for the brain. Exercise is the kind of treatment that it only works if we do it, but that's true for any kind of treatment, and it's true for medication as well. It only works if we take it internally, but it can be very effective. So these are all strategies that people can use. Anytime that people feel overwhelmed, anytime that they feel that their regular activities are being impaired, whether that's work or school or social commitments or church, anytime they feel impaired, it's a good time to talk with your doctor. It's a good time to get some recommendations and know that there are options out there to feel better.
Wow. Those are some really great tips and lots of great information.
Yes. Very good. So if we notice someone and we feel like, they may be experiencing some depression, or they're just not themselves during the holiday season, but you don't feel like they realize it, how do we tactfully maybe suggest to that person, are you okay? Is there something we can do to help you without possibly offending them?
Yeah. Well, I think, the rule of thumb that we use to ask about diabetes can be the same rule that we use for mood, right?
Okay.
So we don't tend to assume that the way I manage diabetes may be the same as you manage diabetes, and the best way to go about that is to ask, what can I do to be helpful? Right? And then when it comes to mood, it can say, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And even just that simple question can open a pathway for someone to share. If people feel safe and they feel comfortable sharing, they will. If they don't, that's okay, because they need to have that sense of choice and that sense of safety. So, but asking goes a long way.
Yeah, because sometimes it can be frustrating if you feel like you've got someone close to you that really needs to seek some help and they won't do it. And so it's just finding that balance of being their friend, or being their support and helping them along.
Sharing information is helpful too. So if someone watching this program learns, as we've just talked about, that depression can be treated and there are options, and that's relevant to diabetes, that can be information that can be shared. But we always want to be careful that we're not pushing information on people who are not ready to hear it, because we want to be connected to people rather than push them away. But asking questions is a great way to begin the conversation.
Okay, very good. Well, Alyssa, do you want to move to our
absolutely.
next slide here so that people know where they can find us?
Absolutely. So again, guys, whenever you need information or you need to have a conversation with us about your medication, where to find prescription assistance, please never hesitate to give us a call. Our phone number is on the screen, but it's 317-352-9226. And also we're located in Castleton, 8604 Allisonville Road, Suite 140. We are open from 8:30 to 5 p.m., so please come through. We have lots of information regarding dietary needs, just general information on diabetes. So there's always so much information that we have that we would love to share with you. Just give us a call. You can also follow us on social media. So we have our Facebook pages. American Diabetes IN is the name. You see it on the screen as well. And then we also have Twitter and Instagram. We're always updating that with our latest information, event information. I know we have a tour date now.
Yes, Tour de Cure. We have a date settled.
Yes, I believe it is October 11th. Is that correct?
Ooh, I thought, well, maybe. I thought it was October 7th.
It might be the 7th, and I just don't know. It's in
thought it was the
October.
first Saturday of
I
October.
will say this: check our Facebook page because it was just they're going to get us at work. Look at our page. Our Facebook page just put up the new dates. So always check our dates on our Facebook, social media pages. Everything's updated and it's always correct on there. So as always, guys, thank you so much for stopping by today. Thank you again, Dr. Groot, for all of your information, and I think this is great information to take home with us and really get a lot out of it for ourselves and for our loved ones. And Carol?
I think this is it.
Yeah.
And once again, a shout out to our intern
Haley.
Haley. Thank you, Haley. And a shout out to Jim Wofford here for again allowing us another year of hosting. And we will be back in January with some new fresh topics. So we hope that you will continue to join us on the second Tuesday of every month at 10 a.m. And I guess we will see you next year.